I did want to put him on the hot seat a little, which I know he doesn't mind, and because I know how Ventura's brain works now, and he's learning more all the time. He has a lot more knowledge than I do in many areas. I have more knowledge than he does in other areas. But him saying, and it was in a book signing a few months ago, so it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I wanted to get his full view on it about, hey, I might run if Bloomberg financed me, for president. And, he said he might endorse Bloomberg because he's not part of the two parties. That's his idea, break the two parties. With Bloomberg, he's a Democrat on steroids, totally against guns, an insider. So I wanted to tell Ventura that. Maybe I'll call him today and tell him off air, because I just haven't gotten around to bringing that up to him. But that's my only point. But I know he'll hear about it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Because I know that a lot of great folks like Braverman and Tyrell are listening right now. I want to give a shout out to those guys as well, and just say congratulations on putting groundbreaking stuff on television. Bob Chapman's coming up. Stay with us.
He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Bob Chapman with us for the balance of the hour, and I want to go over a host of issues with Bob Chapman. But at the bottom of the hour, I want to get into a subject because I want to collect my thoughts on this. I need to write some notes on it. I've got all the ideas, the information, the facts that I've researched, and it only further confirms it. Hitchens' article, Christopher Hitchens, latest Nixon tape buries Kissinger reputation, where they're talking about the Soviets persecuting and killing Jews in the 70s in Russia. Kissinger says it's not a problem, no big deal. And how it goes into the mindset of Zbigniew Brzezinski, writing about how our government funded Pol Pot. We didn't have to kill these people. Pol Pot did it for us. I mean, they brag. Remember, Kissinger has openly written that soldiers are dumb animals. Police are dumb animals. I mean, they sit there, they think you're morons, destroying your own freedom and your own future. And I want to get into this and talk about the global hierarchy that we're dealing with here. So that's coming up, because I see this over and over again, and I'm going to leave it at this and get into it at the bottom of the hour with Bob. I want to cover the economy, WikiLeaks, some other issues first with Bob Chapman, and then I want to have Bob on for this because he's talked about a lot of this and is one of the people out there that, from his deep research, shares my view and understanding of this. And I haven't even really gotten into the point I'm going to be making. It's just that you go back to World War II, and there's been books written about this by Jewish professors and others, that the Zionists in Israel, or who were already starting to move into the area, they would make Jews pay $1 million to get out of Germany. And they did deals so Jews couldn't get into the United States or England, and they could only go, and there's quotes like, a cow in Palestine is worth more than all the Jews in Europe if those Jews don't come to Israel. I mean, it's like this with every group. It's a criminal organization on top claiming it's doing all this for the people under it, just like our government does, or the Chinese government does, but really it's an excuse to feed on them. It's like the Israelis irradiating 110,000 Jewish children. I mean, this is real, folks, like our government shooting up kids in Guatemala with syphilis that just came out this year. I mean, this stuff's so horrible. And then you got to ask yourself, well, who really runs Israel? See, because I look at Prince Philip and Ted Turner, and I look at the Dutch royalty. They're all into Nazism. Ted Turner calls it liberal, but it's population reduction. But that goes back to real Nazis like Prince Philip, Prince Bernhard. And then people say, oh, you're saying the Nazis run things. What I'm saying is it's eugenics. The Rockefellers did fund Hitler. That's mainline news, and the eugenics. They did fund the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. They're always behind it. Margaret Sanger said we got to hire blacks to be our fronts so we can kill these animals and weeds and abort them. They kill 51% of blacks in this country before they're born. See, and they pose as liberals and then call us racist when we criticize big government. So I just report on what I know. I don't even call it Nazism so much. Hitler was an aberration, according to the globalist, of their overall eugenics plan. He was a bad son. For those that know what a bad son is, you have a crepe myrtle tree, an oak tree, the acorns or whatever will grow up little trees every year. You got to cut them. He was a bad son. Bob, I want to get into this more later in the hour because I want to read through these articles with you. But I start talking about something, I go ahead and get into it. This is just such an important issue that's really been hidden. And you got the Nazi camp out there, the Catholic bashing camp, you know, all these different camps that obsess over it's this group, it's that group. But for my study, it's a scientific eugenics elite. And it doesn't matter if they're Chinese, German, Jewish, Japanese, Mexican. By the way, Mexico adopted sterilization in the 30s. It's a group of people who think they're God. Your brief comment on that before we get into the other news.
All I'm going to say, because you covered it so well, is that my own personal experience when I was connected to people who had been in the hierarchy in Germany during the war, and I got to know some of them very, very well. And they, of course, were hooked up with Canaris, who ran foreign intelligence. And in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler was shipping SS people to Palestine to infiltrate. And I think they're there today in the form of their children and grandchildren. And so there was a deliberate attempt by the German government during the 1930s and probably in the 40s too. And I got this straight from two generals.
Bob?
Yes.
Please continue.
The two generals were Leon Degrelle and General Reyma. Reyma was the man who surrendered Berlin to the Russians. And I knew them quite well. And they both told me the same thing at separate times. And we were, talking about world politics and that sort of thing. But I'm not a fundy on this, but that would just happen to be one of my personal experiences and outgrowth of being involved in counterintelligence.
Well, we know it's now come out in history books that there was a deal where they would only let Jews get out to Israel. I mean, this is so diabolical that no one would ever suspect that. It's pure genius is what it is, pure evil genius. Tell us what the generals told you. I mean, the reason I interrupted, I heard a crackle on your line and thought it had disconnected. It sounded like a disconnection in my ear. I guess they may be thinking about disconnecting you right now. Bob, I don't think you've ever talked about this before.
No, I haven't. And both gentlemen are dead now. And I suppose I can talk about it. But they just simply told me that. And how it came up, as I remember now, is that they were citing the fact, and they were both still Nazis. I mean, they believed in the fascist government of Germany, and they did until they died. And they were telling me about the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who had sent several divisions of men to fight on the Eastern Front, and they were accompanied by their mullahs and all their own food and all of the things that that separate Muslim group would need, and how they had fought quite valiantly against the Russians. And that's how it came up. That's how it came up the first time. And the second time was another conversation. But I saw these people fairly frequently over a 10, 15-year period, so there were a lot of other things I picked up as well, but not to do with this subject.
Well, that's because they were using the Nazis here in the U.S., but also in Europe to fight the Russians during the Cold War, and that's when you were there. Because I keep watching the so-called Israeli leadership always claiming how much they love Jews, love Israel, but then in every case, we actually see the opposite going on behind the scenes. There's something very sophisticated going on in all of this. And then you got the Rockefellers claiming they love all these Jewish causes, but they were Nazis at the time. They're Nazis today. They funded the whole deal. I mean, I guess it's that the globalists are masters of funding all the sides, or is it more sophisticated?
No, they fund both sides. Usually there's two sides. Sometimes there's three or four, but usually two. And that goes back deeply into history. This is nothing new. In And, the people who are the power behind governments or whatever, they have always, especially when they get in financial trouble, say, well, we're going to have another war. And so they tell the person who's running Rome at the time, look, this whole economy is going to fall apart. You better go over and kick the crap out of those Gauls over there, or whatever. We're going to have a war going.
Well, Bob, since we got into this now, let's cover it now. We'll hit the economy and WikiLeaks and other developments at the end of the hour. I don't know if you saw this Christopher Hitchens report. Christopher Hitchens' latest Nixon tape buries Kissinger reputation. These tapes are public. We can't play them. There's so much Nixon cussing. I'm not even going to attempt to beep it out. But we know in the end Kissinger set up Nixon. And I would think that this was just Kissinger going along with Nixon and playing like he was an anti-Semite. If I hadn't gotten the intel from you and Anthony Sutton and countless others that he was a Russian agent, that's now coming out mainstream news, that he was a Rothschild agent. His code name was what, Bohr, or the Bohr, and that the other statements and other things Kissinger did. Now he's behind the eugenics. And it turned out he was behind earlier helping ship the radiation systems machines over to Israel. I mean, this guy, who is this guy from your deep research? I mean, what is going on with him saying that, hey, let the Russians kill Jews? It's, we don't care. And now Jewish groups are attacking Hitchens for criticizing him.
Well, that's understandable because I don't think that they understand the full import of what this man is. He's a man for all seasons. He is whatever you want him to be. If he's with a group of Catholics, he loves Catholics. If he's with a group of black people, he loves them as well. And he's with Jewish people, he loves them as well. But he's diabolically evil, and he's also a pervert.
And that's from your intelligence sources?
Absolutely. In fact, I was in Rome one time, and it just happened. I was going over to Observatory Romano, which is a newspaper there, and I was going over with a couple of other people, some of who I had picked up with in intelligence, and there was a newspaper on the stand, and it said in Italian, "Hide your children, Henry Kissinger is coming to town." I'll never forget it. I was thunderstruck.
All right, let's come back, and I'm going to give folks my view on this whole situation, and I'm going to get Bob Chapman's take. Then we're getting into the economy and a host of other issues. But, I mean, where's the ADL with Israel irradiating 110,000 of their own children? Poor, Sephardic, darker-skinned Jews. I mean, what's going on here, folks? This is Nazism. This is eugenics. We'll be right back. Going back to Bob Chapman, then we're getting into the economy and a lot more coming up. There's thousands of data points here, so it's hard to give people a full image of this until they've studied it. But over and over again, Hal Turner turns out to be a Fed, the big white supremacist who attacked yours truly on an almost daily basis. It comes out in news, these Klan groups or Nazi groups that march through black neighborhoods. Turns out they're all Feds. They're all cops. There's no one in the group. I mean, that's come out in the Orlando News, other newspapers in Ohio. This stuff comes out. And then it's used to create racial division. And then you've got the Southern Poverty Law Center with their people inside Elohim City running it, connected to McVeigh. I mean, it just goes on and on. But studying history, if you go back, people following the Bible in the Dark Ages would not allow Christians to lend money. It was called usury.